uh, all the way up here at the top. Action. It's the BK Portrait Glow Action, and if you're in class, you got a copy of this, and I just wanted to go through again how to apply it. First of all, I want to talk about the goals of retouching. This is a beautiful image I did of a woman a couple years ago, and she really is a beautiful woman. My goal in retouching is just to fine-tune things and to make her a little bit more, smooth out some of this tone in the skin. So if we go to the paintbrush, and I make a very small paintbrush that's also very hard, I can mark this out. So this area right in here that needs retouching, the little hole where there's no ear, we might actually touch up some of these lines down here just to smooth them out a little bit, and some of these spots up here. And then overall, we want to smooth out the gradation in the skin and the imperfections in tone. That's basically what foundation does in makeup. And so I'm going to basically take and smooth out all of the skin. Now, with a lot of traditional retouching approaches, you basically just blur the skin, and I don't want to do that. So what I ended up doing is doing a thing called frequency separation, where I blur the skin on one layer, but provide skin sharpness on another layer. So between the two, you have very nice and pleasant skin. So I'm just going to delete this layer and run the action. So it's BK Portrait Glow. And if I go, and if you look at it, it's hundreds of steps long, or not hundreds, but I actually haven't counted how many steps. And the reason I put things like this into an action is because it takes me too long to do all these things each time. And basically what the action does is it runs through and does a sequence of things and connects them together so that I can put them into groups. And then, as you see up here, the teeth whitening group, there's these layers which whiten the teeth and take out some of the yellow. And then I have a darked out mask that allows you to then paint in the teeth sections. Now there's no teeth in this, so I'm just going to delete this one. There's contour, highlight, and blush. We get to those in a minute. Now there's brown and iris, and then blue-green iris, so depending on what we have. In this case, these are definitely hazel eyes. So in this area, you want to paint with white. And I already have the paintbrush, B for brush. And now I'm going to go to 100%. That'd be hitting the letter 0, or taking this up to 100% here. And I want a little bit bigger brush. I want to make sure it's very soft. So I'm holding down the Option Control key, and I do this all the time to resize a brush, and I'm dragging a little bit larger, and I want to make sure it's 100% soft. See, I can make it harder or softer depending on what it is, and it'll give me a pre-visual of it. And I usually want a fairly soft brush for this kind of retouching, and just a little bit smaller too, because that allows me to paint around these areas. Now if you can see, I'm zoomed a little bit too sharp there, but you can see that it just picks up some sharpness and pops the tone in the eyes a little bit. Now, if it happens that I don't like the effect, or I think the effect is too strong, I can simply go up here to the opacity and pull down the opacity, so I fade that in a little bit. But I still have a nice snap to those eyes. Now, if you notice, there's a little redness in the eyes here, and if we go down here, I have another one for green and blue. We can just take that one and delete it, because it's just in there for those blue-eyed characters. Now we have one marked eye whites, and you can see there's a blurring layer to blur out the detail in the eyes, and then some layers to take out the whiteness or the redness. See this red tone here? So I'm going to paint right over the top of that, and you can see how it kind of takes out the red part of the eye, a little bit in this inner part here. Now, with all this kind of retouching, you want to be careful that you're not giving that devil girl appearance. So I oftentimes will then do an effect and then drag down the opacity a little bit until I find a pleasant level. So that's the eyes and the eye whitening. I'm going to go ahead and close that one down. I got a layer here for blemishes, but first let's deal with this skin layer, because the way I created this layer, the way this layer is created, is actually, if we look at the base layer all by itself down at the bottom, and I'm going to hold down the Option key to show just the base layer, and click on the eyeball. And Command 0 to look at the whole scene. This is our base layer, and the way I made a selection for this mask was by basically using in the action, I had to do something that was automated. So selection color range, And then if you go here and choose, not on the mask, let me be sure I choose that background layer, and then I go selection color range. And you can see if it has a skin tone in it, or a possible skin tone, it has that option. So I click on skin tone, and it's going to do its best effect or attempt at selecting skin tone. And this is a good starting point. If I turn my fuzziness up or down, it'll take in or leave out skin. The problem is, in this case, my image here is full of skin tones. There's lots of browns and warm tones in here which match skin, so I end up getting a mask that's not very accurate. If it was on a blue background or some, against the sky, the skin tone might be selected out very easily. In this case, it didn't do that good a job, so I'm simply going to hold down the Option Control key, enlarge my brush. This time I'm going to actually make it quite a bit harder, somewhere around 70-75%. And I'm going to hit X to exchange, or I could hit the little button here to exchange colors. And I want to paint this black in and basically just get rid of that mask. What this is going to do is take off the skin softening effect off of the hair and off of the background by blocking. See, I have it, everything is inside of a group, and so all the effects of this group will be blocked by this mask. So now I'm going to go to a smaller brush. I'm just going to use the bracket keys to quickly get a smaller brush, and I'm going to zip around this area. And I can be fairly loose here in that really I'm just trying to indicate and tell what areas. And I hit X to exchange the color to white. Bracket key to make it bigger, and now I just kind of messed up there because I actually do not want to get lips, nose, or eyes. Now the reason for that is that that's where I want to maintain. I'm going to get a smaller brush so I can come through. That's the area, and if I go a little too far outside, I just hit X, hit X, and paint it back in. X again to go back to painting white. The eyebrows I want to maintain, and I want to maintain the eyes. Why? Because that's the area where you want detail in the skin, and that's where I want to keep it. With the nose, it's not over the bridge of the nose or the top of the nose as much as it is down around this area of the nostrils. That's where there's usually should be some sharpness to go back into suggesting. So I'm basically applying softness over all these areas, and then I'm going to hit X again to allow me to basically take these lips out of the equation, the area around the nose, and the eyes out. Now it looks like I'm making a pretty gross mask here, but actually the effect is fairly subtle, and I just want to basically make sure that I'm applying it to some areas and not to other areas. So I'll hit X to clean this up. And then afterwards, I can actually double click on the mask and actually feather it a little more if I really want softer edges on it. So that's even another step. By double clicking on the mask, I bring up the properties menu. I can then kind of feather the edge of it. All I'm really trying to do, if I now option click on that mask to reveal what's underneath, and I now turn on all those layers, you can see that I'm just softening the layers. See how that skin is just getting softened? It's also turning a little green because I do have a fixed redness in here. There's always one person in a group shot or in shots that has kind of a real pinky colored skin. So this is in there for that. This girl does not have that. So I can turn that off, or I could turn it on and just select that layer and bring its opacity down. That's another approach. Just apply something a little bit. Oftentimes I'll build things in and then intend to take them out later if they're not applicable. Now last step is there is this blemish layer that's completely blank at this point. I can go up, select the blemish layer, and I have these areas in here, some of the spots, even though I smooth things out, are still showing. Well, that's because they were showing. I'm going to go up to the heal brush, and it's the healing brush tool right up here, J. And if you want to flip through brush tools, I do this all the time with those. J is the for the healing brush tool. If you hold the shift and hit the J key repeatedly, it cycles through those brush tools. And I do that all the time because I oftentimes am changing and doing multiple kinds of healing. In this case, I want this tool because I can option click and set a point, and it also allows me to set it to current and below layer. And in this case, I have a blank layer, so I need to be able to use the layers that down below. I really don't want any of the layers up above because all of those are doing other things. So now what I'm going to do, and I want to make sure that I do have these different ones set correctly and kind of finalized, because once I start applying these tones, they're taking from what's below. So now I can just click around and clean up any little spots that bother me, or, smooth out this little area of the nose. She has a little bit of, not terrible acne, but just skin imperfections. So I can kind of click a little dot right there. I'll make a smaller brush and just click that dot. So that's getting good. I don't want to overdo it. Now there's a couple of freckles here, a little dark spot there. You can see I can just kind of paint over it. Now I'm going to make for a larger brush, because this line right here, I might be able to just go back and forth across that line and take that out. Now I don't like the way it did it there, so I'm going to try a couple of different approaches. And there we go, that's better. And sometimes you have to apply a little bit of randomness in with this tool. If you make too direct of a mark, you just kind of like draw an area like that, it'll tend to leave some residual. That one didn't do too bad. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll draw like that, and then I'll go across it, which will help, and choose a spot off center, which will help break it up. So a lot of times if you're trying to cover a line up, you want to do it with a cross mark, right? Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Brilliant, in fact. Okay, so there's our basic retouching. I'm going to probably work on this area a little bit, and I might go in and lighten the lips up a little bit. So for our last three option up here is the blush, highlight, and contour, which is basically digital makeup. So I'm going to turn all three of those on. Now the blush, if I use a white brush, and again, I'm going to hold down the Option and Control and make my brush a little bit bigger. And I'm going to go up here and make sure, let me get to the brush tool, B for brush tool, make it a little bit bigger. And now I'm going to make sure it's all the way soft. I don't want anything. So it's 100%. Hardness is set 100%, and size is set somewhere up here around 250 or so to get a nice big brush. Take it down just a little bit. And now, what I want to do with this is, you can see as I click, it's going to make redness in there. So it actually is like making a blush. Now because it's cumulative, it builds up. I'm going to take the opacity down because I don't want to put on that much at a time. And I'm going to brush just a little bit of tone in there. I happen to move onto the blush there. Let me move back up here on blush there. There we go. There. Now we're just adding a little bit of redness in there. I'm not sure I like that. I'm not one for doing a lot of makeup, but it's an option there. Highlights, you might make a smaller brush and come along and up these highlights in the cheeks, or around the chin, or maybe these highlight points here if you want to create light spots. And then the contour is just the opposite. It'll create darkness, so I can kind of emphasize these dark shadows, or this side of the face. Okay, make a bigger brush and make that whole area darker. Now I personally don't like that too much because I like the light that was on her face to start with, so I'm going to turn all those off. I just want to demo that's why those layers are there, and that's what they do. All right, so that's using the action, that skin glow action. I'm going to go through and do the next video. We'll kind of break down the steps to create some of that and give you some ideas about how to do some of those things. Thank you very much, Ben Kerns. One more Photoshop tutorial.